Washington State. Those some of the pictures we showed you a while ago of that Amtrak train. They say they were aware of the incident with train 501, their service from Seattle to Portland. These are some of the latest pictures that have been sent in, and exactly as we were describing earlier, a huge emergency services operation there on the ground. Those just some of the pictures sent in from viewers, but we have some live pictures as well from the scene, which we're going to put up in the next little while, and I'm going to tell you the latest detail we're getting from the emergency services themselves, because those are the live pictures, and look at that, the whole of that highway covered in emergency response vehicles. Let me tell you what the local sheriff has been saying in the last few minutes, because he has said that there are no fatalities of motorists reported after the train derailment on the highway bridge. That is what the local sheriff has said. We are aware of multiple motorists injured on that roadway, but no fatalities there of motorists. I suppose the key bit of detail that is not included in what I've just read out is in terms of any passengers on the train. As you see the pictures of there, people just covered in grey blankets being looked after by the emergency services. One assumes they are either motorists or people from the train itself. We saw from that picture, the still picture, at least a couple of the carriages going right off the edge of the bridge. Certainly the first of the carriages in that still photograph we put up a while ago, actually being there on the ground. So a really serious incident there. These the live pictures from the scene. Let me show you the pictures sent in to us again from just one viewer on the opposite highway. Clearly the highway to the left absolutely packed with ambulances and police cars, as we get a glimpse of one side of the bridge with Amtrak acknowledging that their train has been involved in this incident. But despite all of these scenes there on the ground, very few exact details coming in to us, and that is pretty much the case with incidents like this. This happened in the last hour or so. It is still in the very early stages, so a lot of the facts, a lot of the details still very fluid as they deal with what is very clearly a pressing situation on the ground. But there, all those vehicles backed up as the emergency crews get close to that bridge, and no word at all in terms of why that train actually left the tracks. But we saw it was multiple carriages, and there it is. You see a much tighter shot there, and you can see a couple of the main carriages completely off the track, over the side there of that bridge, and right down, stretching to the cars on the highway below. Worth just repeating what I told you a few moments ago, that although there are said to be multiple motorists injured on the roadway, no fatalities, that according to the local sheriff. I'm being told in my ear that there is a reporter speaking on the ground that we can actually just cross into and listen to, so let's put that up.
Box trucks and even a fuel truck all stuck in this backup here. It's going to take some time for even them to then try and figure out how to turn around without a lot of room to maneuver. I don't want to turn the camera around because this is what we're focusing on, but let me tell you in the other direction what we are seeing. Jordan, actually, if you do want to turn around, that's okay. We have southbound traffic again being detoured onto the city center exit where we are right now at the golf course. And you can see one box truck at least doing what we think some are going to have to do, which is kind of try and make a pinpoint turn and head in the opposite direction of southbound traffic, since the lanes are all shut down right now. So you're going to be seeing southbound traffic heading north, just like the northbound traffic is, which is moving pretty well at this point. There's a big backup where the train derailment actually is, and then just a handful of cars are getting through at a time. So we're going to spin the camera back around from the backup in one direction over to the backup in another direction. This is the northbound traffic, as you see, just a few cars getting through. And unfortunately, we are starting to see those ambulances start to come through from the scene as well. In the northbound lanes, you can see one ambulance after another lined up with their lights flashing, ready to go. We've already seen one pull out from this scene. And again, this is exactly where that train has derailed. You can see one car completely over the side and the other one's just dangling over as well. It looks like everything happening from our vantage point is now on the road below. We don't see anybody up on the tracks itself, but we are here at the golf course again. This is going to be the staging area for emergency crews, and they are still showing up. So we may even use every live shot and every possibility we have while we're out there to remind people, if you can avoid I-5 in this area heading to DuPont, please do, because they are treating this, as Ed Troyer had mentioned, as a mass casualty response. They have crews and equipment coming in from multiple agencies. It's not only going to be emergency responders, but heavy equipment as well.
Well, worth just hearing the latest details from just one of the affiliate reporters there on the ground that we had access to. And just there, as you look at the scene on your screen, a huge amount of presence from the emergency services. What is not clear is if there are any passengers still on board that train. You can see the carriages that were being described, at least one there completely off the track, dangling, another one tilted over the side. Unclear as to whether that is the front of the train, the back of the train. Although the sheriff was talking about no fatalities of motorists, there is still no clear word as to any sort of injuries from those on board the train. We don't know how many people were on that train. We don't know if there were injuries of people on that train. I'm sure all of that detail will emerge in the coming minutes, but certainly a lot of that emergency effort dealing with the cars on that highway where obviously the train has come down in part, and we know that there were multiple motorists injured on the road beneath, but certainly no fatalities among the motorists. But a huge operation. You heard the reporter there just say that cutting gear was being brought to the scene, and this pretty early morning there in Washington State, and no word at all. Just looking at all the various agencies I have in front of me, the Reuters news agency, AFP, the local reporters and sheriffs, but no detail at all about quite why this train has actually left the tracks. But you can see very clearly that it has, and you can see just the way that several of the carriages just crisscrossed there as some of the police services just edge onto that bridge very close to the first of the carriages. Let's head there, speak to Austin Jenkins, who's from Northwest News Network, who is pretty close, I think, to what we're seeing on our screens at the moment. Austin, thank you for joining us. What do you know?
Very little at this point. We know that this was a new service for the Amtrak train that goes between the city of Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. It appears this is a northbound train passing through Thurston and Pierce counties to the south of Seattle. It was a new service, a bypass that was supposed to be faster for the trains, faster for the passengers, and this is one of the inaugural runs, if not the inaugural run. It was crossing over a bridge or a trestle over Interstate 5, the main north-south thoroughfare on the west coast of the United States through Washington State. Just after the locomotives or engines crossed over, clearly something terrible went wrong. The train cars derailed. At least one car plunged to the roadbed of the freeway. There are other cars that are hanging, and we know that at this moment, as you can see, there is a massive emergency response and rescue operation underway.
Austin, what isn't clear from what I'm reading, and certainly what we're seeing on the screen, is whether there are any passengers still there on the train.
Yeah, that's not clear to me from where I'm standing. I'm probably 100 yards or so, maybe 200 yards from the scene. And it's very hard to see the rescue operation other than to know that there is a tremendous response here, and the complexity of getting people out of these train cars seems immense, because the one that I'm looking at now is literally hanging, dangling from this trestle, from this bridge. I would hope that those who were uninjured were able to make their way back out onto the tracks, but anybody injured or worse, the rescuers are going to have to get in there, and they're going to have to make sure it's a stable situation.
Austin, you're describing exactly what we have currently showing on our screens. We have the live pictures very, very close to that main carriage that is dangling there from that bridge. You said an interesting thing earlier, that this was a new, faster service. You thought possibly it could have been on its inaugural run. Do you happen to know, were the passengers on board just ordinary people, everyday commuters, or was this an inaugural run with invited guests?
There may have been some dignitaries as well as regular passengers on this train. Detective Ed Troyer from the Pierce County Sheriff's Department just walked up here. He can give us a little bit more information about perhaps casualties and what's happening at this moment. Detective Troyer, you're on the BBC World Service.
Yeah, well, so far there's been no fatalities on the road. They've extricated multiple people out of the cars and multiple people out of vehicles that are on their way to the hospital. The fatalities are all still inside the train cars. How many there are, that's yet to be determined. Some of the trains went through trees, and they're working their way inside to get in there now. People that are not fatally injured or catastrophically hurt are under tents and being cared for. They evacuated the train.
Do you know how many at this point?
At this point, I've heard many different numbers, so we're not confirming any numbers on injuries or fatalities. We know that the train was heading southbound. Amtrak train out of right through this area in Pierce County, just before the county line, derailed. And what caused it to derail is up to the NTSB. They'll be the lead in that. But
I'm going to step away. That was Detective Ed Troyer from the Pierce County Sheriff's Office, and that's the very latest. Again, he's reporting that there are fatalities here, but he does not have a count.
Austin, did I hear that correctly, that in that answer where he was talking about the injured, when he was talking about potential fatalities, he said in that answer that there were still people on board in some of those carriages? Did I hear that correctly?
That sounds correct. What he said is, at least for those who were severely injured or in the cases of fatalities, that there were still people on board on those train cars. He indicated that no one on the freeway, no drivers of vehicles were killed when the train came off the tracks, but that there are fatalities on board the train, and that they're still in the rescue and recovery process.
And he also seemed to indicate that some of the carriages, we're clearly seeing a picture from the base of the bridge with that carriage very precariously hanging from the bridge going onto the road, but other carriages have ended up elsewhere. Is that right?
He indicated that maybe they had ended up in the trees. This is a very wooded area, so that we may not be seeing a full picture of the scene, and that there may be, in fact, be cars off the other side, is the indication he was giving us.
Austin, if you don't mind, just stay there, but the local sheriff is also talking to reporters on camera, so we're just going to bring the microphones up and hear a little of that.
On the rails before that, around that time?
We don't know anything that when it comes to the rails yet, what's going on. Yeah. So this is what you're seeing is what it is. And on the other side of that bridge, there's 3 or 4 more cars that are upside down on the road and in the woods.
And you mentioned there are some people who have been able to walk off the train where they are right now.
People that have walked off the train, they're being cared for, and transportation's coming to take care of them.